A portrait of Rene Descartes, the father and originator of modern philosophy and France's greatest philosopher, hangs in the Louvre Museum in Paris. He looks out at you from heavy-lidded eyes, aloof and somewhat arrogant, and the smile is one of gentlemanly scorn and contempt. How did this man shape the philosophy of the modern world in which we live? Descartes was a man of the early 17th century, but he had only contempt for his society, including the court of the king, Louis XIII, the clergy of the church, and the man in the street and his affairs. And his contempt was undisguised for what was taught in the universities, which he regarded as outmoded, traditional, stagnant, still clinging to medieval learning, and submissive to church authority. Descartes himself attended La Flèche, which was a recently founded Jesuit university established for the education of the sons of the nobility. Of his 8 years at La Flèche, Descartes says, "From my childhood, I lived in a world of books, and I was eager to learn from them. But as soon as I had finished the course of studies, I found myself saddled with so many doubts and errors that I seemed to have gained nothing. Nevertheless, I had been in one of the most celebrated schools in all of Europe." At the university, he had studied Greek, Latin, history, literature, science, mathematics, and philosophy. Of these, only mathematics, which had been well taught at La Flèche, and the little science that they offered, seemed to Descartes to have any certainty or to offer any true knowledge of the world. Descartes had a special scorn for philosophy. Philosophy is a term of contempt and derision for him. He says of philosophy, "It has been studied for many centuries by the most outstanding minds without having produced anything which is not in dispute." You can see that Descartes, the father of modern philosophy, begins to look very modern indeed. He begins to look like the revolutionary students of the 1960s who condemned the universities for their irrelevance to the problems of war, civil rights, and poverty. But Descartes doesn't want relevance. He is asking for truth and for the overthrow of false beliefs in order to reach true beliefs. But Descartes goes even further and argues that our beliefs would actually be purer and on firmer ground if from childhood we had never been under the control of teachers, but had been guided solely by our own reason. But is it possible for me, or would it be possible for you, to overthrow all the accumulation of beliefs, however false or uncertain, and to use only our own reason as the basis for believing anything? This is what Descartes proposes. And this is the way modern philosophy begins. It begins with Descartes' meditations and with a revolutionary overthrow of all belief, and so with a complete break with the medieval world. Modern philosophy begins with the self in solitude, meditating, with a person conscious of the false and doubtful things he has accepted so far in his life, and deciding in his meditations that the time has come to overthrow all his beliefs. In the first sentences of the Meditations, Descartes says, "Everything must be thoroughly overthrown for once in my life if I ever want to establish anything solid and permanent in the sciences." And Descartes goes on to say, "Today I have freed my mind from all cares. I am quite alone. At last I shall have time to devote myself seriously and freely to the destruction of all my former opinions." But can you, by our own reason, establish solid and permanent truth? Descartes, like Plato and all of rationalism, claims that reason is universal in all human beings. He claims, as all rationalism does, that reason is the most important element in human nature, that reason is the only means to certainty in knowledge, that reason is the best way to determine what is right and good and how to construct a good society. All of rationalism makes these same claims. We have seen Plato make these claims, that reason is the most important single factor in human nature, that reason is the only means to certainty in knowledge, that reason is the only way to establish what is good for human beings and to construct a good society. But how can I, by my own reason, establish solid and permanent truth which past philosophers have failed to do? Descartes' answer, like that of most rationalists, is, let mathematics be your ideal. Let mathematics be your model for the use of reason. In Descartes' Discourse on Method, another one of his great works, he says, of all who have sought for the truth in the sciences, it has been the mathematicians alone who have been able to succeed in producing reasons which are evident and certain. And it was the method of mathematics, using reason alone, Descartes believes, which enabled the Polish astronomer Copernicus in the 17th century to revolutionize astronomy with his Earth-centered, heliocentric theory of the universe, and enabled the Italian astronomer Galileo in the 17th century to offer the final proof of Copernican theory, the Copernican heliocentric theory of the universe. This is the method which Descartes, himself a mathematician, himself the inventor of analytical geometry, wants to use for philosophy. Mathematics, he thinks, can clean up the confusions and uncertainties of philosophy. The method of mathematics will gain the same clarity and certainty for philosophy as geometry has, and as the scientists have gained for physics and astronomy. By becoming mathematical, philosophy could achieve absolute certainty and could prove itself as mathematics does to my own reason, to your own reason, and to everyone else's, and be acknowledged as a universally true philosophy, a final truth which would then end the bitter disputes raging between the church and the scientists in Descartes' time. It would end the fear of the Inquisition under which scientists lived, the fear of imprisonment or torture, the fear that Descartes himself had, that he might suffer the same fate as Galileo. But what is the method of mathematics with which Descartes proposes to solve the ills of philosophy? Descartes tells us in his Rules for the Direction of the Mind. Mathematics, he says, consists in the use of the only two mental operations by which we are able to arrive at true knowledge. And these two mental operations are intuition and deduction. By intuition, he means our understanding of self-evident principles, such as the axioms of geometry, for example, our understanding the axiom that a straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points. This is self-evident to our reason. Or, things equal to the same thing are equal to each other. Again, self-evident. It proves itself to our reason. Or such as an arithmetic proposition, such as 3 plus 2 equals 5. These propositions are all self-evident in that they prove themselves to reason. To understand these propositions is to know that they are absolutely true. No rational mind can doubt them. By deduction, Descartes means orderly, logical reasoning or inference from self-evident propositions, as all of geometry is reasoned in strict order by deduction from its self-evident axioms and postulates. The best example of this is, of course, the well-known deductive propositions, all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. The chief secret of method, says Descartes, sharing a little secret with us, is to arrange all facts into a deductive, logical system. Descartes' goal as a philosopher is to build a system of philosophy based upon axioms known by intuition and by deduction, such a system of philosophy as will remain as certain and as imperishable as geometry. No philosopher has ever made a bolder attempt to arrive at a philosophy of absolute truth. The entire series of the 6 meditations, as Descartes presents them, day after day, is a single sustained effort to reconstruct philosophy, to build it all over again, to find for philosophy the certainty of a mathematical proof. What Descartes is determined to find is a self-evident principle which will serve as the axiom or first principle for his mathematical philosophy and will serve as the foundation from which an absolutely certain philosophy can be deduced. But what are the requirements which this foundational belief must meet? Descartes lays down 3. 1, its certainty must be such that it is impossible to doubt it. It must be self-evident to reason. It must be clear in itself and distinct from every other belief. 2, the certainty of this belief must be ultimate and not dependent upon the certainty of any other belief. And 3, it must be about something which exists so that from it beliefs about the existence of other things may be deduced. But how will I find such a belief, Descartes asks. And he answers, by the method of doubt. The attitude of doubt was in the air in the 17th century, which was a century of change, a transitional era, with old beliefs and philosophy losing their credibility, and the new scientific theories under fire and not yet established on a firm philosophic foundation. Descartes will use the method of doubt. But despite the solitary quiet of his meditations, Descartes' doubting is revolutionary. He is going to overthrow all his beliefs. He is going to doubt everything. To achieve his bold quest for an absolutely certain philosophy, Descartes is willing with equal boldness to overthrow and destroy all he has ever believed, to doubt everything. Skepticism is the name for the philosophic position of doubt concerning the reliability of knowledge. Descartes' type of skepticism is called methodical or methodological skepticism. Methodological skepticism may be defined as the use of doubt methodically in order, by using doubt, to arrive at true knowledge. Descartes uses methodological skepticism in order to overthrow his beliefs. Meditation 1, you may note, is entitled, Of the Things Which We May Doubt. But to doubt all of his beliefs, to take complete inventory of all his beliefs, would be interminable. I will examine them, says Descartes, the mathematician, Descartes, the lover of mathematical orderliness. I will examine them by classes or groups to see if there is any one belief which defies doubt by meeting all 3 criteria. First, the proposition must be impossible to doubt. Second, it must be an ultimate truth. And third, it must be about something that exists. And so, in an orderly way, class by class, group by group, Descartes goes through all his beliefs. First, he looks at beliefs of sense perception. These are the most readily believed of all, what I know by my senses, but they are often deceptive. For example, what distant objects look like to the naked eye is now denied by the telescope. Galileo had just invented the telescope in 1609. And what minute, very small objects look like to the naked eye is now denied by the microscope, which Kepler had just designed in 1611. And what about optical illusions, such as the pencil that looks bent in the water? And what about the hallucinations that affect the senses? Clearly, says Descartes, the senses are untrustworthy as a source of certainty. But surely, Descartes insists, I cannot doubt my senses telling me that I am here, seated by the fire, attired in a dressing gown, and that these hands and this body are mine. Yet, he says, have I not dreamed that I was sitting here, and may I not be dreaming now? Descartes, who slept so much, must have had this dream often. What I perceive by the senses may be the deception of a dream. And so he goes to another class of beliefs. Second, what about beliefs in material things? What about the belief that an external world exists? These beliefs must be doubted because they are based upon sense perception, which is now understood to be deceptive and therefore uncertain. And so thirdly, he asks, what about beliefs from the natural sciences? These too must be doubted because they are based upon objects known by sense perception, which is now established to be untrustworthy. And so fourthly, he goes on, what about beliefs in mathematics? Why does he doubt these? He has always regarded mathematics as completely certain in his propositions. For him, mathematics is a very model of certainty. Moreover, mathematical propositions are not made doubtful by being derived from sense perception. Not at all. Descartes says, whether I am awake or asleep, 2 plus 3 makes 5, and a square has only 4 sides. And it seems impossible for such obvious truths to fall under a suspicion of being false. These beliefs, mathematical beliefs, are known by reason, not by the senses. But is it impossible to doubt them? He reflects. Mathematicians sometimes fall into error. Could they always be in error? In an effort to push his methodological skepticism to its extreme, and for lack of a reason to doubt mathematics, Descartes invents one. Suppose, he says, there is an evil and powerful demon who deceives me in all the things I think I know best, so that I am always deceived, even in my mathematical beliefs. This is the strongest possible doubt. Descartes himself says it is exaggerated, hyperbolic. It seems contrived, not a genuine doubt. But he pushes his case. Can any belief withstand this doubt? Can any belief withstand my doubting all beliefs on the ground that I may be deceived in all my beliefs, even those I think are absolutely certain, by some malignant demon? Now Descartes enters with his famous triumphant reply. Even if I am deceived in all my beliefs, I must exist in order to be deceived. If I doubt all my beliefs, including those of mathematics, there is one belief that cannot be doubted. Every time I doubt, I must exist to doubt. In doubting the truth of every other belief, I cannot doubt the belief that I am doubting. Therefore, I exist. Even if all the beliefs I am conscious of are false, one belief remains true. At any moment that I am conscious of thinking, or of any mental act, such as being conscious of doubting or willing, I exist as a thinking or doubting or willing thing. And so Descartes has found his absolutely certain, self-evident, and indubitable first principle. He formulates it in Latin as Cogito Ergo Sum. Cogito, I think, ergo, therefore, sum, I am. And in French, his native language, je pense, donc je suis. Thinking, for Descartes, includes any act of consciousness that we are immediately aware of. He says, by the word thought, I understand all that of which we are conscious as operating in us. And so thinking includes doubting, understanding, affirming, denying, willing, refusing, feeling. As conscious acts, all of these necessitate my existence. I think, therefore I am. I doubt that I think, I deny that I think. These only confirm that I must exist to deny or to doubt. How do I know this belief? Cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. By immediately understanding as self-evident that to think, to doubt or deny or will, I must exist, and that my thinking without my existing is impossible. Cogito ergo sum is true each time I think it. Cogito ergo sum is true each time I deny it. But what is this I who thinks and therefore exists? The cogito proves only that I exist as a thinking thing, and only when I am conscious of thinking. Cogito ergo sum, every time I think, therefore I am. It proves that I am a thinking thing, an existent substance. And as an existent substance, a thinking thing, it is my nature to have thoughts, ideas, beliefs. But nothing has been proved by the cogito about my body or its movements, my walking or eating. I cannot claim self-evident truth for I move, therefore I am, because moving I can know only by sense perception, only by observing myself to move. The cogito proves only that whenever I am immediately conscious of thinking, I exist as a thinking thing. But does the cogito fulfill the three requirements Descartes laid down? One, is it self-evident to reason? Is it indubitable? Descartes answers yes. You can't escape the cogito by doubting it. Every time you doubt it, you affirm it. Two, is the cogito independent of any more ultimate truth? Descartes answers yes. The cogito is not inferred from all who think exist. I think, therefore I exist. But rather, I myself understand as a self-evident truth that I exist whenever I think. And three, does the cogito refer to the existing world? This was the third requirement. And Descartes answers yes. It refers to me, who exists as a thinking thing. Sum, I am, I exist. And so Descartes claims that the cogito checks out with his three requirements. Have later philosophers agreed? Does the cogito proof withstand criticism as an absolutely certain foundation for philosophy? There have been hundreds of critical commentaries on the cogito proof. Of these, the most frequent attack on the cogito proof is one first made by Pierre Gassendi in letters that he wrote to Descartes. And he claimed that the cogito does not meet the second requirement, that it is not ultimate, but depends upon other truths. Two of the truths upon which the cogito clearly depends are, one, that things or substances exist, two, that thinking or any other action or state can exist only as the action or state of a substance. These two truths are necessary for the proof of the cogito, which says that my thinking cannot exist without my existence as a thinking substance. Descartes assumes, thus, these two propositions, that substances exist and that actions such as thinking can exist only as the actions of a substance. Descartes assumes these two propositions but does not prove them. In fact, he borrows them from the very medieval philosophers whom he despises. And finally, what about the influence of the cogito? Descartes grounds his entire philosophy on the absolute truth that when I am conscious of thinking, I know I exist. In Descartes' theory of knowledge, the one truth that is unshakable, safe and secure from any doubt, is that of my own existence as a conscious subject. And thus the Cartesian cogito introduces subjectivism into modern philosophy. Subjectivism is the view that I can know with certainty only myself as conscious subject and my thoughts. Subjectivism is the view that I can know with certainty only my own consciousness and its content. And thus subjectivism carries the implication that the knowledge of other minds and of matter and of the physical universe can be proved, if at all, only on the basis of what I know with certainty, namely the existence of my own subjective consciousness. Note the title of Meditation 2. Its title is Of the Nature of the Human Mind, and that it is easier to know than the body. Therefore, for subjectivism, the knowledge of the existence of everything else other than my own mind becomes questionable, problematic. What about the existence of my body, the sun, other minds, God, the physical universe? These must be proved to exist, and they can be proved to exist in only one way, by inference from my consciousness and its content, on the basis of my consciousness and its content, which are all that can be known with certainty. But since my own mind and its thoughts are all I can know with certainty, and the existence of anything else becomes therefore questionable, subjective consciousness and its contents are separated from the physical world of nature and from the social world of human beings. These, physical nature, human beings, are external to me, out there, separate from what I am certain of, my own consciousness and its thoughts. Can this separation, this chasm, this gulf between my consciousness and the world and human beings, can this gulf ever be bridged? This problem and these questions begin with Descartes and plague all philosophy which comes after him.
Pre-recorded in the studios of the Maryland Center for Public Broadcasting.